Hi everyone, Darren Hunter here, and I'm with Michael Sanz. And today we're going to do a double header. We're going to do a podcast which is really suitable for two podcast series, a PM performance podcast show and the outsourced PM podcast show. Because Michael, when we went through the content of what we want to talk about today, I just thought this is really suitable for both. So let's just talk about both. Now, Michael, firstly, very quickly, you grew in Melbourne 650 doors over a period of years on 1.5 staff. Now, that is insane. But what's even more insane, a lot of your growth, most of your growth came from word of mouth, which means owners were absolutely blown away with your level of service, which is a lot of people are already asking a lot of questions like, how the hell did you do it? So Michael, that's what we're going to tackle today.
Right. Perfect. An exciting topic.
It is. And it does seem like, I said, Michael, we've got to be careful here because a lot of people think that this is completely unbelievable. Like normal property management's on Venus, but this is Mars. But it's not. It happened in suburban Melbourne with you, and you very much, we see you very much like an Elon Musk of property management. And this is your masterpiece, I guess, of proving, what you did. So let's just get started. Now, for everyone's benefit, Michael, very much in the early days, Michael, you knew that there was a whole bunch of tasks that needed to get done. I think we need to touch on outsourcing first, because you outsourced up to 80% of the property management tasks to virtual assistants. Firstly, why did you feel that you needed to do that? Why don't you just employ people on the ground?
Yeah, I think first to kind of state that there was no magic dust for this process. Like I didn't just kind of snap my fingers and all this was made possible. It was sort of trial and error. I had staff throughout the way, and over that period, if I couldn't justify the role in office, then I wouldn't have that role. And so, we kind of dwindled away staff members. Using virtual assistants, it started from like a project base. It started many years ago as ad hoc stuff, work that we would do. And then we slowly incorporated, well, maybe you can do this. Maybe you can do arrears. Maybe you can do maintenance. Maybe you can do leases. Maybe you can do tenant inquiries in properties. And it was a trust thing. Right?
So is it fair to say you just questioned everything? Because a lot of people think, well, you can't give maintenance to virtual assistants. You can't give phone calls to virtual assistants because this and this and this is going to happen. And we could go through a whole list of tasks that people say, no, virtual assistants can't do that. How did you smash through that and why?
I think largely we all have like these self-imposed beliefs that someone else can't answer the phone as well as we can, or that other people can't speak English as well as we can. And yeah, fair enough, Darren, I mumble, I speak very fast. I'd be very hypocritical if I would say that I'm the best English speaker out there. And again, you're not going to put people on the phone answering your calls if you don't have a trust with them and you haven't given them the scripting. So much so that, Darren, if someone walked in off the street with no experience or 12 months of experience, what's the difference in me hiring someone remote, not in the office, taking my phone calls? I still got to train them the same.
So let's just begin your journey. Now, in another podcast, we did talk about, you did try out several countries, and in the end, the Philippines was the country. It had all the ducks in the row with all the right ingredients that makes a good virtual assistant compared to all of the other countries. What were the other countries you tried? There was India, there was European countries. Where did you try?
It was most of them. And we did like Mexico, we did India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all the countries around there, Western Europe, Eastern Europe. And I looked at, I found that certain countries did tasks really well. I found like Eastern Europe did graphics and marketing quite well. I found that, in India, I found it was more transactional rather than relationship based. And so I couldn't have them answering the phones because more churn and burn. And that's largely a product of like them servicing American clients who just want transactional. I found that time zones with like South America, like Mexico and so on, didn't really sit well with people having to do shifts they didn't really want to be doing. And then, I did look at countries where English, like England, for example, but having an English accent is no different to someone having like a Filipino accent. And I found that the Philippines was same time zone, really lovely demeanors. And when you think about it, over 25% of all international nurses are Filipinos because they have lovely bedside manner, customer service, family focused, time zone. I mean, all those things just kind of made sense that why should I be looking elsewhere when all these things are captured in the Philippines? University educated. Like this country uses YouTube to learn how to do absolutely everything if they don't know how to do it.
Yeah. So many reasons they tick a lot of boxes, and with Teams by Design, of course, the virtual assistants are based in the Philippines. But let's just keep on going on your journey of outsourcing. And you said one of the early things you did in the early days is you recorded every call and you divided into really two different types of categories, which is owners, but then also tradespeople and tenants. Tell us about that and that journey.
Yeah. So at one point we had someone answering the phone, and they would always say, I can't do this because I'm taking all these calls. I can't do this. And then I said to them, what are the type of calls that are coming in? And so we tracked and monitored all the calls coming in, everything from tenant inquiry, new business, maintenance, just everything that came in. And I kind of went through those reports and looked at it and said, well, someone in my VA team could handle a lot of these calls because they were from tenants and tradespeople, and they're just calling with a question, right? They want to ask a question and they want a resolution to that. So as long as I can deliver on exactly what they need and want, I don't need a reception person. And the owner calls, we handled in office because, again, tenants and tradespeople, they've got a question, they just want it answered. Owners want to feel like you love them. They want to feel like you want the business. It's almost from a point of privilege. The owners kind of dangle, I'll give you my business. But a tenant and tradespeople, they just want to have their problem solved.
Long as you were able to answer their question, it wasn't a problem. It was just the owners that needed that extra, local touch, local communication.
Yeah, and you know what? Like it was sometimes there were escalation points where the assistant couldn't answer something, but it was never a case of I don't know. There was no problem. I'm going to escalate that to Michael. I'm going to escalate that to Jason, and we would handle that. But that was really rare because again, like what are the most common things? Maintenance follow up, lease renewal, issues with paying rent or whatever the common traits were. You don't have to be experienced in real estate for 20 years to help resolve those questions.
Let's just go down this rabbit hole a little bit further. And, people out there thinking, how can Filipino virtual assistants deal with tenants and tradespeople? And what's probably coming to our listeners' mind right now, maintenance. There's so much involved, Michael, with repairs and maintenance and so much intricacy. Now, I think, fair, there's a lot of inexperienced property managers out there that don't know the answer to those questions. The bosses are very happy to throw new property managers and experienced people into. But how did you get your virtual assistants proficient with repairs and maintenance?
I guess a funny end comment would be that one of our TBD clients came on board and they had about 3,000 outstanding maintenance requests and follow-ups and everything along maintenance lines, and not even their experienced in-house property managers could tackle it. Our team took on that task and finished it in like 2 weeks. We wrapped everything up, and it's because all these things are if this then that, they can be taught. So if the hot water service bursts, it's asking a series of questions. Like Darren, I reckon that if a tenant rang an office most times and they said, I have no hot water, the office will send out a plumber. We would actually say, okay, was it gas or electric? So we find out if it's electrician that needs to go out, a gas plumber that needs to go out. We would triage it. And it's easy to triage. It's easy to teach someone how to triage and ask certain clarification questions instead of just sending somebody out. The other part to that was we would ask the tenant for like a video and a photo. So if it was something that we were confused with or didn't quite understand what they were trying to advise us, we would send that off to a tradesperson and say, hey, this is the photo and the video that sent us of the hot water unit or the leaking tap. What do you think we should do? And then we would get like a proper diagnosis from a proper tradesperson. We took the guesswork out of it. But I still see this, Darren, in offices, people that are 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, they don't have technical experience on maintenance. They don't.
So that's a big one. I mean, getting your VAs to be handling repairs and maintenance, dealing with tradespeople, dealing with tenants. As you said, your office staff based in Melbourne, we're dealing with the owners because the owners feel privileged and so forth. So let's talk about, and no doubt the virtual assistants did a lot of other communication as well, but repairs and maintenance is a big one, and well done for nailing that. Let's talk about now massive workload, because 1.5 staff with 650 properties. You know, our listeners or our viewers are now thinking, well, what about the workload? What about the routine inspections? How did 1.5 staff manage all of those routine inspections?
I identified pretty early on, probably back early 2000s, that property managers aren't really the best people to identify ongoing maintenance. You know, every property manager has an opinion on how people are living, and you know, they might be distracted when they go into properties. Not everyone, but like there's a lot of property managers out there that wouldn't know that a crack leaning a certain way could be a potential building fault. You know, they struggled. So anyway, I identified that, and we alternated with a tradesperson going out to do the inspection, and we made sure the owners were aware in advance, letting them know that, hey, this person's going out. This is what to expect. They will call you from the property if there's anything that needs doing. And the trades will call from site and say, hey, look, the washer, the taps are leaking. I can change it now. It'll cost X amount. Or I can arrange a quote for you for someone else to go out and attend. What we found was when we implemented that, Darren, that maintenance at the start skyrocketed because we were picking up things that property managers would have missed, even like I may have missed, right? But after that point, maintenance went down drastically. Like there was just not much at all because we were proactive. It also meant that when people were moving out of the properties, we knew what to expect because we had a rolling snapshot of the property and the history there, and it gave clarification. But then on the alternating inspections, like our team member would go through, and her job was basically just to do those type of inspections and go through, you know, look at how the properties are being kept. And it also meant, Dan, that we could be more flexible in, do we need to go out to that office, or can we do a FaceTime? Can we do a video recording? Because some tenants are just like triple plus tenants. They pay rent on time. They're immaculate. Why harass them? Right? And so we educated our owners, and a lot of owners were on top of it. They were like, fine, you can go through once a year. You can go, you know, because there was that understanding there.
I think it's a fallacy that we think that property managers are actually good at repairs and maintenance, and they're not. They're not builders and not tradespeople, so they miss things. And traditionally, over time, the property becomes worn out, tired. Things are only done reactively, and that is the typical rental property. But I myself, when I was with an agency working with them very closely, probably around about over 10 years ago now, we had 4 inspections to do a year because we were based in South Australia. We did one property manager one that focused on tenant performance. The next one was done by a tradesperson that focused on repairs and maintenance. The next one was done by the property manager. The next one was done by the tradesperson. So we did exactly the same thing. And we were able to find that we were able to get the quality of the property so much better than if the property manager did all the routine inspections. And this just makes sense, Michael, because a lot of bosses out there are having an aha moment at the moment. Like, yeah, that just makes sense because property managers suck when it comes to looking out proactively for repairs and maintenance issues.
Just on that too, the other thing which I found to be really useful was the power of dictation and transcribing. I found that I don't want to generalize, but I'm sure people can relate. Property managers go out, and because they had to write in the report at the time, they were kind of they were choosing their words sparingly so they didn't have to write as much. But I found that if you had a dictaphone, I had a dictaphone, I had Dragon software too, so I could transcribe. I found that if you're at an inspection and you actually narrate it, you can be more descriptive rather than having a few key code words. You can actually say, stain on wall, purple in middle, discoloration. You can be more descriptive. And that also meant that on the reports, as they kind of kept going, there was more history rather than the ambiguity. Now, your virtual assistant can type that up. There's software now that you can speak directly into your phone, and that'll dictate it and transcribe it on the spot. So all these things you can be doing, your tradespeople can be doing to be more descriptive around your inspections, which saves so much time.
Okay, well, let's just go back, and I'm going to throw some more stuff at you. Let's talk about the big workload stuff. 1.5 staff for 650 properties. Michael, one of the busiest processes and procedures a property manager can do, or an office can do, is the letting procedure or the leasing procedure of renting out a property to a new tenant. There is so much work involved. I remember, regularly in my training sessions with property managers, timing out how long these things take, and they can take 10 to 12, even up to 15 hours, all the travel time, with all the application processing work, with all the signing up of the tenant, everything. You might have to go to the property several times to get that right tenant, and then so all of this work. How did you manage to be renting 650 properties? Now, everybody out there, Michael also has a record that in 2 years, for 650 properties across 84 suburbs, you had a zero vacancy for 2 years for all of those properties, which is insane. So how did you do it?
Yeah, so a few things there. We had our lease, we had common lease dates too. So we had people, we only had people vacating at certain times of the year. Also, we had virtual tours on probably over 95% of the properties we had virtual tours on. And then we had video, just, iPhone walkthrough or camcorder videos on everything. What that meant was that if someone wanted to inquire about a property, I mean, Darren, if you want to talk about points of difference, when I was talking to owners, I could guarantee that every single person who inquired on one of our properties, every single person, that's 100% of all inquiries, I could guarantee that they would see their property in one way or another, rather than not having a video or virtual tour and having to wait for the right opportunity for the tenant to allow access and the person to be available to turn up, right? Because there's no guarantee they'll be able to see the property. So one of our points of difference was that we could guarantee that. If a tenant gave notice to vacate today, I could have their property up online with a virtual tour and a video that I'd already done. And I could have a higher rent list on there because of the opportunity cost of people, wanting to find a property, but also it meant that I wasn't just relying on people that were local to the area at the time of inspection. By having the video and virtual tours, it meant that anyone around the entire country, around the entire world, could see our property for rent, make an application, where my virtual staff would process the applications and then be sent back to us to approve or decline. But it also meant that we could rent properties faster. And I think, if you go back and look at our REA stats, we were renting properties 4 times faster than our competitors across 84 suburbs. And we had more than twice the amount of people looking at our property. That also meant that we had less time on road. So I didn't need to have leasing people going back and forth showing the property. Everyone was qualified when they went to look at the property. There was, the tire kickers would reduce drastically. I would have people say, oh, but 20 people inquire, you're missing out on getting all their names and details. We used IRE, so we captured everyone's details, and if there was a comparable property that we thought was appropriate, we would send it to them.
Wow, that's awesome. What can I say? It's just so radically different, because the average office will just put up boring photos, which means the tenant only gets a partial look at the property, which means they are now having to look through the property, which they're going to have to do anyway. But it cuts down so much of the qualification process, doesn't it? And you're doing it so many years earlier, when everyone was just doing boring photos. You were already. How long have you been doing virtual tours for?
Was it 2011? We started using technology and applications on phones where you walk in and you take photos of every single angle, and then you upload that. And it was kind of quite tedious. And, then the cameras started to match up with the software. And, but, you're talking about over 600 virtual tours. And that takes time, because, you currently have a tenant in place now. And this is where people fail by automating. There's a tenant in place now, and they advertise it and they rent it without having to do a virtual tour. And they say, well, why would I bother? I've already rented it out. That's fine. But for me, it was making sure I had it, because you have good periods and bad periods out there, as far as peaks and troughs. It meant that it didn't matter. Next time that tenant goes to vacate, I can advertise it from day one. And what if I can get a higher rent? What if I can lower my days on market? What if I can save money for my clients by not having their property vacant?
Well, that's awesome. Okay, well, let's just move on. So the leasing letting procedure is such a big one there, and that's how you minimize the amount of time that you didn't need to spend that 10 or 12 hours per property. You're able to dramatically reduce that, which means your team on the ground could do that. But let's now move to the next rock I'm going to throw at you. How do you handle then all the ingoing inspections and the outgoing inspections and all the work? How did you do all of that with 650 properties with 1.5 staff? You can't get a virtual assistant to do the final inspection.
So yes, good point. I also just want to kind of bring back another point. We also automated the handover process as much as possible. So we did recordings on what we expect as tenants, explaining the lease. So I know people spend a lot of time meeting with their tenants and going through all the different clauses and everything. We recorded that so that when people got their lease, they knew straight up, and it reduced that onboarding time from 1 to 1.5 hours down to like 15 minutes. Basically, people were just coming in to pick up the keys. As far as like the ingoings and outgoings, we did them all at the same time. And because we had proactive maintenance, it meant that there weren't really any surprises when people vacated the property. And also too, because we weren't being invasive around the inspection period, because we had the videos and the virtual tours, tenants are really forgiving and cooperative, because we would say to them, hey, we want to keep your inconvenience to a minimum. This is our plan, what we're going to be doing. We would, if there was any like minor maintenance and things like that on the outgoing, we would note that down, and then we would advise the tenant what the plan is to fix, small hole in the wall, a tap is dripping. Like, we would just get those things done. It wasn't an inconvenience. If there was larger maintenance, then we just had to, put the plan in place around what was to be done. But Darren, because we were proactive with the maintenance, it really wasn't, those headaches went.
So let's just confirm. So because of all of the getting a tradesperson in at least once a year to do a complete overhaul on the repairs and maintenance perspective of the property, and then doing the maintenance that was identified and getting the property as pristine or best condition as possible, that then impacted the amount of time that you spend doing ingoings and outgoings. Is that right?
Totally, 100%.
Wow, that's awesome. Again, there's a lot of aha moments going on for a lot of people at the moment, and well done, Michael, for being that forward thinker, because it's the truth, and it just makes sense that doing that and doing things different is going to allow the environment where you can manage 1.5 staff with 650 properties like you did. It just makes sense.
Yeah, and like at the end of the day, I didn't want to create a job for myself. Being a business owner, I didn't want to create a job for myself. I went into this to build a lifestyle, family. I wanted to travel. I like working from the beach. I like working remote. I didn't want to feel like I was chained to a desk. And again, like, there were trials, there were errors. There were sometimes I made mistakes, but they were okay, because if I failed at something, if something didn't work, then I just reworked it. But I didn't want to give myself a job. I wanted to give myself a lifestyle as a business owner. So,
I mean, we know that you outsourced up to 80% of your workload to virtual assistants. By the way, everyone, if you want a list of what those property management tasks are, go to teamsbydesigntasks.com. That's teamsbydesigntasks.com. There's the full list there. Michael, let's just now go back to now. One of the things that really stands out like a sore thumb is you got a lot of your growth through word of mouth referrals, which means you had a lot of raving fans. What were some of the best customer service strategies now that you've unshackled and unbusy your team? They're not doing the mundane, everyday grind tasks anymore. Your virtual assistants are doing all of those. What were some of the key customer service things that you did that made such a big difference to increase that word of mouth referral growth that you got?
Around 2006, 2007, I was doing a lot of project marketing, and largely around project marketing, you relied on all the network. So other accountants, planners, lawyers, we had access to a lot of property for sale, investment property and so on. And that strategy, we had all access to property. I would be pounding the pavement and I would be calling the people that are in front of my ideal clients. And I was able to establish relationships. And from just doing that simple, that alone was just a really simple method of having a relationship with key people that are in front of the people that I want. I took that same strategy from doing the sales and ran that through property management. And what that meant was that I had, rather than trying to find 500 people or 1,000 people, I only had to find 10, 20, 30 individuals that were in front of that volume of people that I had a relationship with, and they were able to speak praises about the business and what their clients were talking about us. From that, being able to have clients that were introduced to you, referred to you, there was that trust level there, just delivering on what I promised and having an understanding on, for me, a benefit was I understand mortgages and finance and all that about property. So being able to have that hat on with my clients to talk to them about their interest rates, the value of their property, the rental of their property, meant that I was in a far stronger position of trust. And that also led to when they were having conversations around the coffee table, hey, our property manager does this, he knows this, he can do this. And then that's there was that word of mouth there. And that was from one strategy. Yeah. And when we're when Dennis and I are coaching, we coach over 30 different strategies, but that one in particular was just absolute golden.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's there's a lot to be talked about here, and we need to wrap this podcast up. Michael, obviously, if for our listeners and our viewers, if anything resonated here about, doing these strategies, anything that Michael spoke about with the strategies he did on the ground at his office, but particularly also around using virtual assistants to unbusy and unburden your team with all of those things that are just keeping them so busy, but probably not productive. And there's a difference, Michael, as we know, between busy and being productive. Just reach out to Michael. What's the best way, Michael, that people can get in contact with you and chat?
Just reach out to, I'll say hello at teamsbydesign.com.au. Hello at teamsbydesign.com.au.
Is that .com.au or .com?
It's just .com.
Yeah. So hello at teamsbydesign.com.
Good pickup. Hello at teamsbydesign.com. And let us know how we can help you, and then we'll book in a time and have a Zoom and catch up.
So just go to teamsbydesign.com and you'll be able to, there's plenty of easy ways to fill in a form, and then Michael will be in contact. So great podcast, Michael. Well done. I'm been chafing at the bit to really deliver this stuff, because what you did was unbelievable. You truly are the Elon Musk of property management. You are a true pioneer against traditional thinking, which means you get far better and different results than the traditional. So a big congratulations from me.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. We definitely like challenging the way things are done. And I guess that's why, our coaching clients, we get to meet with them and sit with them and kind of challenge how they do things and how they can be doing things differently. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, I look forward to helping.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.